Have you ever stared at your phone with a message half-typed, thumb hovering, heart doing that little nervous salsa, and then you just delete it? Not because you didn't have a point, not because you weren't right, but because you could already feel the confrontation like it was a thunderstorm rolling in. And suddenly, "I'll deal with it later" feels like a brilliant life strategy. Most people assume conflict-avoidant people are just too nice, or shy, or passive, like they're allergic to discomfort. But the psychological reality is way more interesting, and honestly, way more compassionate. For a lot of people, avoiding confrontation isn't a personality flaw. It's a nervous system habit. It's your brain trying to keep you safe using an old map, even when you're driving in a totally different city now. Think of your brain like a smoke alarm. It's not designed to be calm and reasonable. It's designed to be dramatic. If it smells even a hint of danger, it screams. The problem is, for people who avoid confrontation, the brain has often learned that disagreement smells like smoke. A raised eyebrow, a tense pause, that "we need to talk" text. Even the idea of disappointing someone can hit like an alarm at 3 a.m. No fire. Just vibes, but your body reacts like it's evacuating a building. And that reaction usually happens before you even have time to think. Your heart rate changes. Your chest tightens. Your throat gets that "I forgot how to speak human language" feeling. Your thoughts get foggy, like your brain just put itself in airplane mode. This is the part most people don't realize. Confrontation avoidance isn't always a choice. Sometimes it's an automatic survival response. We talk a lot about fight or flight, but there are other settings on the nervous system menu. There's freeze, where you go blank and can't move forward. And there's fawn, which is a real thing researchers have discussed in trauma and stress literature. You appease, you smooth things over. You become the emotional customer service rep of the relationship. "No worries, it's fine, don't stress." Meanwhile, inside you're basically a shaken soda can pretending to be still water. If that's you, you might recognize the pattern. You replay conversations in your head later and think, "Why didn't I say that?" You write the perfect response in the shower. You become a TED Talk speaker in your imagination. But in the moment, you go polite, you go quiet, you go invisible. Not because you're weak, but because somewhere along the way, your brain learned that being direct costs too much. A lot of this starts early, not always in a dramatic movie scene way. Sometimes it's subtle. Maybe you grew up in a home where emotions were unpredictable, where conflict could explode out of nowhere. Or maybe confrontation didn't explode, but it lingered. The silent treatment, the guilt, the tension that made the whole house feel like it was holding its breath. If you learned that speaking up leads to withdrawal, anger, ridicule, or shame, your brain makes a very logical decision. Let's not do that again. Even in calmer households, some kids learn that being easy gets rewarded. You're praised for being agreeable, mature, low maintenance. You become the child who doesn't cause trouble, who reads the room, who makes everyone okay. That can look like emotional intelligence. And sometimes it is. But sometimes it's hypervigilance wearing a cute outfit. And then you grow up and carry that skill into adult life, where it becomes a burden. Because now you're not just reading the room, you're managing it. You're pre-editing your needs to avoid the possibility that someone might get uncomfortable. You become so good at preventing conflict that you also prevent intimacy, because real closeness requires truth. And truth occasionally makes things awkward before it makes things better. Here's another sneaky part. Avoidance gets reinforced. Every time you dodge a confrontation, you feel relief. That relief is powerful. Your brain loves relief. Relief is basically your brain's version of a like button. So the next time conflict appears, your brain says, "Last time we avoided it and survived. Let's do that again." Over time, your nervous system learns a simple equation. Confrontation equals threat. Avoidance equals safety. And the habit deepens. But it doesn't stay contained. It spreads. You start avoiding not just arguments, but difficult conversations, boundaries, requests, feedback. You might even avoid clarity. You keep things vague because vague feels safer. You hint instead of asking. You hope people notice instead of speaking. And then you get frustrated when they don't, because you've been communicating in Morse code while everyone else is speaking in full sentences. Now, to be fair, avoiding confrontation is not always bad. There are situations where it's wise. If someone is aggressive, unsafe, unstable, or emotionally abusive, stepping back isn't avoidance, it's protection. The goal isn't to turn you into some fearless debate gladiator who argues about parking spots for fun. The goal is to understand why your brain treats normal conflict like it's a bear in the kitchen. And this is where we talk about what confrontation means to you. Because psychologically, people don't fear confrontation itself. They fear what confrontation represents. For some people, confrontation represents rejection. If I disagree, you won't like me. That often links to attachment patterns. If in early relationships, love felt conditional on being good, agreeable, or helpful, then disagreement can feel like risking the connection. Your brain reads it as, I might lose them. For others, confrontation represents humiliation. If I speak up, I'll sound stupid, dramatic, selfish. Maybe you were mocked for expressing needs, or you were told you were too sensitive. So now your brain tries to avoid that old feeling by making you stay silent. For some, confrontation represents chaos. If I bring this up, it will spiral. That can come from being around conflict that escalated quickly. Your nervous system learned that one small comment can turn into a wildfire, so it avoids even lighting the match. And for many people, confrontation represents identity. Like, I'm not the kind of person who makes waves. Being agreeable became part of how you see yourself. So speaking up isn't just uncomfortable, it feels like betraying who you are. But here's the twist that can change everything. Avoiding confrontation often creates the very outcomes you fear, just on a delayed schedule. If you avoid conflict to prevent rejection, you may end up resentful and emotionally distant, which can strain relationships anyway. If you avoid to prevent chaos, you may allow small problems to grow into huge ones. If you avoid to prevent embarrassment, you may end up feeling invisible, which quietly erodes your confidence. Your brain is trying to protect you from pain, but the strategy can accidentally build a slow, chronic kind of pain instead. And I want to pause here because if you're hearing this and thinking, okay, cool, so I'm broken. No, not even close. If you avoid confrontation, it usually means you have high empathy, a strong sensitivity to emotional tone, and a deeply developed ability to anticipate consequences. That's not nothing. That's a skill set. The issue is not that you care. The issue is that you're carrying the entire emotional weight of every interaction like it's your job. It's like you've been walking around with an internal, emotional weather forecast. You can sense when someone's mood is shifting before they even speak. You can feel tension in a room like it has a smell. And because you're so tuned in, your brain does this quiet thing where it tries to keep everyone stable. Not because you're manipulative, because your nervous system equates stability with safety. If you've ever wondered why you can be brave in other areas of life but freeze in conflict, that's why. Courage isn't global, it's contextual. Your brain might be totally fine with stress in work, fitness, deadlines, even risk. But interpersonal tension, that's where the old wiring lives. So what actually helps? Not just be confident. Not stop caring what people think. Your brain would like to inform everyone that those phrases are emotionally useless. What helps is teaching your nervous system that confrontation can be survivable and even productive. That you can be honest and still be loved. That you can disappoint someone and still be safe. That a tense conversation isn't always a catastrophe. Sometimes it's just two humans trying to update the terms of their relationship. One of the most powerful shifts is realizing that confrontation doesn't have to be a fight. It can be a repair. It can be clarity. It can be kindness with a spine. Imagine you're holding a glass of water. If you never set it down, your hand will shake. Not because the water is heavy, but because holding it forever is exhausting. Avoidance is like that. You keep holding all your discomfort, all your needs, all your unsaid truths, and your emotional muscles get tired. Confrontation, done well, is simply setting the glass down and saying, hey, I need to adjust how we're doing this. And yes, it can feel terrifying at first because your body might react like you're stepping onto a stage with no pants on. But over time, the more you practice small moments of honesty, the more your brain updates its prediction. That's how we learn: prediction, experience, adjustment. Your nervous system becomes less dramatic when it has evidence that you can speak up and the world doesn't end. Sometimes it helps to think of it like building tolerance. If you've avoided confrontation for years, going straight into a high-stakes showdown is like trying to run a marathon without ever walking around the block. Your brain will revolt, but small, manageable truth-telling moments, those are like reps at the gym, not flashy, but life-changing. And when you do speak up, the real goal isn't to deliver the perfect speech. The goal is to stay present, to keep your body from going into full alarm mode, to remember that you're allowed to take up space in the conversation. You're allowed to pause. You're allowed to say, I'm nervous bringing this up, but it matters to me. That kind of honesty is weirdly disarming because it's not aggression, it's reality. Here's the philosophical part, the one that hits when you're brushing your teeth at night. You can avoid conflict or you can avoid yourself. You can't do both forever. Eventually, your needs will surface as anxiety, resentment, passive comments, emotional numbness, or that strange urge to disappear for a week and recharge, when really you're just exhausted from being agreeable. You don't have to become confrontational. You just have to become congruent. The kind of person whose outside matches their inside often enough that life feels less like performance and more like peace. And if you're thinking, but what if they react badly? Then here's the truth that's both scary and freeing. You can't control their reaction. You never could. Avoidance only gives the illusion of control. What you can control is whether you abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. And every time you choose a small, respectful honesty, you're telling your brain, we're safe enough to be real. So if this video is hitting a little too hard, like it's narrating your life with suspicious accuracy, take a breath. You're not weak. You're not too much. You're not destined to be the quiet one forever. You're someone whose nervous system learned a strategy that worked once, and now it's time to upgrade the software. If you've got a story about a moment you avoided confrontation, or a moment you finally spoke up and surprised yourself, I'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments. And if you want more psychology explained in a way that feels like a conversation, not a lecture, you can subscribe and stick around. Your brain has been trying to protect you for a long time. Now let's teach it that honesty can be safe too.